All right, Aaron. So now we're going to move to probably your favorite topic, storytelling. At least what I perceive your favorite topic to be. How does storytelling fit into all of this? Like, how deep do you go in storytelling?
Let's rephrase it. How deep do I go into emotive storytelling? Right.
All right.
Because look, I mean, if you've ever walked out of a movie, if you've ever shut a book and stopped reading it, if you stopped reading, a Facebook post, or you stopped watching a Netflix series in the middle of the series, you will discover that nobody cares about a story. The story story. What the heck is that? Right? What the heck is a story? Right? You can't hardly even put your mind. You can't hardly even visualize it because it's just so vague, right? So very few people care about story. Let's be honest. What they really care about is what's in it for me, right? And to isolate and define what's in it for me, then you need something that is extremely interesting to the viewer or the reader, right? And that is an enticing character they can relate to. So if you're not creating stories with fascinating characters that resonate with the reader, you're in an exercise of futility, right? Mm-hmm. So going into storytelling, I always start with a customer. What do they need to read? What do they need to hear? What emotions needs to be touched? In what way can I most resonate to their core buying need? And so it's hard to paint a single succinct picture to that. But I had placed this very thing over on LinkedIn, and somebody asked me, "Can you push emotions too hard?" And I was like, "You betcha," right? And then I quoted Josh Mannheimer, who is probably my favorite working copywriter today, where he tells a horrific story. And he says, "Man, it was fun to write. It was interesting to read, but good luck getting anybody to buy after." Right?
So, we don't want to traumatize people.
Right.
I mean, you don't want to scare people so much that they become paralyzed, fight or flight, right? So there's this balance of feeling irritated enough to move toward or away from, right? Something, but we don't want them to be paralyzed, or overwhelmed with an emotion, or again, thinking about some other solution or some other problem they have instead of the one that we want them thinking about right now.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I wrote a Facebook ad for one of our clients in the writing space, and I started with the client, right? And started with, I don't have the copy up in front of me, so I would butcher it trying to quote it. But ultimately, it began with, if you can write an ad like this, then, you can make money online, something like that. So it's whatever your ad, your blog post, your landing page, whatever form it takes when it comes to story, it certainly helps to understand the different story arcs, right? Are you a hero? I mean, are you a story that starts in the hole and works its way out like the Cinderella story, right? Or are you like the Rocky story, rags to riches, right? So where do you want to take your client would be this is the power of good copywriters. Mm-hmm. I mean, the copywriter who understands these story frameworks, who understand, how to emotionally move a client from point A to point B, that is a copywriter worth hiring and retaining. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the story has got to do one thing, and that's to direct the emotions of the reader, and that's the copywriter's job. You are in charge of the reader's emotions from sentence 1 to CTA.
So, Aaron, I think I heard at the beginning you say that people don't care about stories, but then you just went on how important story is for moving.
Sure. Yeah,
the reader. Like, can you help me bridge that gap?
Again, it boils down to the character, right? It boils down to the characters in the story.
So they don't care about boring stories. I think everybody cares about stories. We can't not care about stories, but boring stories are not engaging.
Stories that don't resonate, right? That doesn't speak to the reader, right? Heck, I could tell a story about some NFL quarterback, being the greatest thing in the world to a cosmetic audience. And what do you got? You got a big fat zero, right? So the story in and of itself.
I've got an example, a real world example where I wanted to throw my laptop across the room. So there are different types of stories, right? And so one is a nightmare story. And this guru, he was selling a marketing, like high ticket coaching service, right? And his nightmare story, so like the worst day in the life, right? His nightmare story was that he lived on a credit card for a year trying to sell an ebook and he only made $35. Now this is a biz op product. And so I'm going, man, I'd love to even get a credit card, let alone live on one in a house for a year. I don't even have a house, right? And so it was so revolting. I logged off. Like I was like, nope, I don't care what he has to say. I don't care he has proof. Like this is just like, it made me mad. It didn't resonate at all, right? And I don't know who he intended to resonate with. I mean, clearly he resonated with enough people, but for me as an avatar, I was just like, blah, no, that's just, blah. It was disgusting. Flip that to one of John Benson's, great VSL copywriter. One of his nightmare stories was when he was overweight, because he did a lot of weight loss stuff, right? And he was overweight, obese, and he had a problem with junk food. And he wanted junk food. It's something like this. He wanted junk food. He went to the gas station and he stole a package of powdered donuts and stuffed it in his jacket and like scarfed them down in the parking lot because he was so addicted to junk food. Like, now that picture is always going to be worse than any weight food issue that most people reading or watching the VSL are going to experience, right? Like you can feel like, oh my God, right? Wow. So if it worked for this guy, it's got to work for me when I just, maybe eat an extra serving of food right at dinner. Completely different story. You got to pick the right one. And there's always many you can pick, but it's got to resonate. Like you said, Aaron.
A story is a double-edged sword. All right. It is that anytime you go out to tell a story, you can tell it in umpteen different ways. Right. And so many of the more disgusting, for me, this is personally morally disgusting kind of stuff, is what you see out on ClickBank, I think it is. And I mean, they'll go out there and they will tug at heartstrings and they'll rip your eyeballs out.
I lost my leg while I was, having a heart attack on the way, and yeah.
And one of the more $100 million VSLs, I sat there and I literally had a visceral sickness watching it, because I knew everything that they were doing had already been done in the prior product a decade earlier. Same testimonies, right? Same characters, same lies stacked on top of another, and it did $100 million, right? And so you have to draw your line in the sand. What's your job? Is your job to tell a story? Where's your job to tell the dang truth, right? And so that's, yeah.
All right, so I'm a brand owner. I'm not a storyteller. How do I go about writing stories? What's the easy source for stories? This is
your story as a brand owner. Like, how did you come to building the business, right? How did you come to finding your product? Why did you do it at all, right? So that's like an about page story, but that's the easiest one to start with and get comfortable with stories.
And in most cases, or a lot of cases, people started their product or brand because it is solving their problem, which means that they're kind of the ideal client anyway.
Yeah, that brings up. Go ahead, Tom.
No, you.
I'm going to say that brings up user-generated content, right? If you've got users generating your content, you've got built-in story, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's authentic, that's real, that translates, that connects, resonates,
Right.
everything magical about it.
Yeah. And that you can use, if you have the written test or the video testimonials, you can convert those to written testimonials. And in almost all cases, a good user-generated content or testimonial is telling a story about where they were, what problems they had.
Yep.
They couldn't find a solution. They found this product. It solved all their problems, and now they're going to buy into perpetuity.
Yep. Same for a good case study. A good case study. Yeah, exactly. We'll tell that story.
Yeah, and to that point, coming back to your earlier comment about Tony Horton of P90X, just saw this morning or yesterday morning, whichever it was, their newest ad, and it starts with user-generated content, right? And the lady leads it into, and then it turns into this whole long-form sales process. And I said, these are smart people right here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why UGC works, is because it is storytelling, and it's typically authentic storytelling and feels authentic, and people just want that trust that it has worked for somebody else.